that testified against your bill they had a press conference today and talked about your bill and others. Their concern is, I'm sure not surprising to you, their concerns are voter suppression, and they're basically arguing that they've taken, 194 was repealed, and now they argue it's kind of being brought back piecemeal. So maybe you could speak to the concerns that you've heard about your bill, and maybe some of the more general concerns about the election bills that are passing.
I haven't listened to or read the transcript from the press conference this morning, but this is the same kind of thing I heard in House Committee 2 days ago when I testified. It's, I think, pretty hard to say that 29 days of early voting, which will remain after the passage of Senate Bill 238, and in some way reduces people's ability to vote. What we're looking at here is a very narrow bill that specifically gets rid of this awkward overlap period without further reducing early voting opportunities more than it has to be. After the passage of 238, as I've said repeatedly, Ohio would still be a leader in the nation. We would be the most permissive state for early voting in the entire region, by many orders of magnitude in most cases. We'd be in the top 10 in the nation, and we'd be, of the most populous states, you have to go to the 30th state in size before you'd find a state that has more early voting than Ohio. And I think it's something that we should be proud of. Early voting has been widely accepted by Ohioans. It helps keep lines down at the polls. It gives people more convenience. All those are great things. And the fact that we're able to eliminate this problem that the boards of elections have been telling us for years is a problem. And this is nothing new or novel. Some people have said, well, there have only been a couple hearings or what have you. This is not a new concept. We've been talking about this sort of awkward period for a number of years, and the fact that we can eliminate that period without causing a great reduction in the number of early voting days is I think, a good thing. I think that elections bills are sort of unnecessarily politicized sometimes, and I think that's what perhaps is going on here. This very same way of going about this has been proposed by Republicans and Democrats in the past. Now they'll say that was part of a larger package, sure, but it wasn't as though they were negotiating. It was passed on a straight party line vote with all Democrat votes, and they started off with 21 days of early voting, and then when it was introduced, and then it moved to 28 days of early voting. So this is not a new idea, and this is not some sort of a massive overhaul of early voting. This is a sort of a very narrow fix.
There's also an argument made today by Catherine Terser that you give them an inch and they'll take a mile. When asked about her, she was asked about that prior bill that you referred to from the Democrats, and she says, "Look, we got to fight for this hard, because if we just sit back and say, okay, go ahead and get rid of Golden Week, then suddenly it'll be, instead of 29 days, it'll be 21, it'll be 16, it'll be 10."
It's kind of a straw man argument. I mean, if you were to go with the slippery slope argument, then nothing could ever get done here, because you can always argue out to the nth degree what could happen. I'm the first to say, and I said this in the House, that I'm a fan of making sure that we have maximum opportunities for people to vote. I introduced the bill that created online voter registration. We haven't been able to get that done yet. I am all for making voting, I think, as the Secretary well says, easier to vote and harder to cheat. I mean, we need to have the maximum participation that we can have in our process for it to work well. So, this argument about what may happen in the future, hopefully we debate those bills when they, if and when they materialize. But as far as what's actually on the table right here, this is a proposal that, again, has been introduced by both Republicans and Democrats, and is in no way any kind of massive overhaul of the early voting process.
Would it be less politicized if, for example, instead of your bill moving on the same track as Senator Coley's bill, which deals with absentee voter applications, and there's concerns about that bill as well, instead of moving along the same track with that bill, maybe it was moving along the track with your online voter registration bill, a bill that these groups tend to support? I mean, it seems to me the reason some of these things get politicized is because there is, I think there is some
sort of the
compounding effect, and whereas, you may support the online voter registration, that bill hasn't even had a hearing yet. And whereas these other two bills are on fast tracks.
Sure. You know, as far as the timing, those are leadership decisions. I'm trying to get good policy done. You know, there have been various different conversations and iterations about how to go about some of the election reform issues, whether you do it all in one big package or whether you do it in smaller chunks. When we did it in one big package, people howled and said you need to do this in smaller chunks so that there can be individual debate on each item. Now that we're doing it that way, there are people that are complaining about that. So there's no perfect way to do difficult policy changes like this, but you know, I think that the way that we're going about it is very transparent. It's open to debate, and I've been happy to hear that some of the thoughtful voices in the state editorial boards and others have said, you know what, a month of early voting is not going to harm anybody. It's just a hard argument to make.
Have you been given any indication whether your bill's going to move next week in the House?
I think that they've scheduled hearings for next week, but I don't know for sure. You probably have to check with Chairman DeVille on that.
And obviously, you guys are done for the year. If they make any changes, it would require, you know, it would sit until January, until you came back. I don't know that there's any reason why your bill would need to be enacted, you know, or need to be signed in December rather than January, but unless there's
I don't think there's
just
any
wanting to get it done.
There's no particular timeline issue that I know of as far as having to be done by the first of the year or anything like that. I will say that the further in advance of the next election cycle that we can get this kind of thing done, the better. I think the hallmark of a good democracy, and I think that we're an example for the world really, is a stable and predictable and stately process where, to the extent that rules are changed, it's done far enough in advance that people know. And so, you know, I'd like to see it done as soon as it can be.